Hey guys, welcome back to the Forge. We're getting back into our basic blacksmithing or beginning blacksmithing series. Today we're making a leaf. So let me get the fire started and we'll get started.
Alright guys, first I want to apologize for the sound quality and delay of the video. We had some technical difficulties with the sound that put us behind. So we're going to be using 1/2 inch square bar today. You can see that I'm using 1/2 inch round on the teaching tool. You can use about any size material to make your leaf. Just be careful with some of the smaller materials like 1/4 inch or 1/8. You might not have enough material to really spread that out to make it look good. So we're going to be drawing this out into a blunt point, as you can see in the on the teaching tool. And I'm going to grab the hook teaching tool to kind of show you the difference from what we did with the blunt point versus a long tapered point. So we're going to keep that blunt, and we're going to keep that, try to keep that shape. Then we're going to knock, put it half on, half off, and then knock in that shoulder. And then we're going to draw the stem out. We're going to keep the stem attached until we're ready to cut it off and get the length that we need. Then we're going to flatten it out, and then we're going to really fuller it out to make that leaf. And then we're going to do some fun things whenever we start playing around with the leaf. So I'm going to bring the metal out of the fire, and I'm going to keep it at a slight angle up. I don't want it laying flat. I want it at a kind of a slight angle, as you can see. And then I'm just working the tip. And I'm going to draw that material down to where it's not a super sharp point. Like I said, we're going to do more of a blunt point on it. And as you can see, it's making a little bump in the center of it, and you're wanting that bump on top, as you can see where I'm showing there, because that's going to be a good striking point to give you whenever you go to make your leaf fuller out. Alright, so we're going to keep drawing this material out until we get our blunt point, which will take a couple of heats. Don't freak out if you're not getting it done real fast. It takes time to get that technique down on being able to hammer that tip the way you need it to. But I'm just going to keep hammering this down until it gets to the desired length that I want, which is about right there. And as you can see, well, if I could put it in the camera angle, there you go. You can kind of see the shape roughly reminds you of like a Tonto tip, how it kind of has that angle up on it. That's what you're looking for. You want that little bump in the center because that's where you're going to have a little bit more mass to be able to draw out some of the body of your leaf. So the next step that we're going to be doing is half on, half off. And I don't really have any sharp corners on the side of the anvil I always use, so I'm going to move to the other side of my anvil. I use the whole anvil, every piece of it. So I'm going to do just a little bit of straightening up and drawing it out, just a hair, just to finish up the length that I wanted to get. Okay, so as I'm showing right here, I'm going to be doing about an inch or so to where we're going to put the shoulders in. Then so we can start drawing out our stem and really identifying where that bulb is going to be on the end of that. That'll turn into our leaf. Okay, so this is the sharpest corner on my anvil. And I'm going to bring the material out of the fire and do half on, half off blows. I'm going to get everything lined up, make sure I'm going to hit in the exact spot I need to hit in. And then I'm going to hit. And as you can see, if I can get it in frame, I hit where the line is on the back. It's not laying flat on my anvil, it's laying on one of the corners where we did all of our work. And as you can see, again, if I can get it back in frame, one day I'll learn how to do that. You can see that it's making that lip, and it's going to keep it to where it hooks on. Now I'm going to start defining that more and really going to start working towards getting that shoulder really put in place. As you can see, I'm moving the material around and really looking to where my shoulder is going to be at and where it's being established at. Because I really have to get that shoulder established so it will have a definition between where the bulb is and where the stem is. So this is going to take a couple of heats, and just keep working that on that side of that's your side of the anvil, your sharpest corners. And as you can tell, I'm moving the material around now. So I'm working on getting it squared back up, because you work everything out into a square. So you always have a flat side to hit on. And so I'm working on getting everything squared back up and making sure that that shoulder and that bulb stays off of the anvil. I don't want to pull it up on the anvil because I'll smash it flat. Alright, as you can see, we're really getting a good definition of where the difference between the bulb and the stem is going to be located at. Alright guys, so I'm back over still at the sharp corner of my anvil, and I'm going to draw this down some because I want to make sure that I really get that, like I said, that good definition of the separation between where the bulb is and where the stem is going to be. And you want to keep it on that sharp side so you can keep it hooked over and not risk damaging where your leaf will be at. Alright, so I'm just tapping everything back straight. We don't want any bends or anything in it. And you can see the real definition between the bulb and the stem of our leaf. So we're going to go to the other side of the anvil. That's the side I like working on more. And we're going to start really drawing this out. Now this process is the longest process of making the leaf. Alright, so while we're drawing this out, I want to talk about the stem of our leaf. If you're wanting it to be integrated into being part of like a hook, you're going to want to leave it a little bit thicker. But if that's where you're going to be putting your screws. But if you're wanting to, like with the piece that we're doing here, it's just more of a decorative fun piece, we're really going to draw that material down really, really thin. We're going to leave everything connected to our main bar so we have a handle, especially if we're going to have to use a pair of vice grips or a pair of pliers to hold your material afterwards. You don't really want to be holding the leaf part long periods of time with that because you don't want to make indentions into your work. So again, we're going to be drawing this out. It takes a while to draw this down. Again, it was 1/2 inch square bar, and we're going to be drawing it down below 1/4 inch, I know. And it takes just a while to do that. But you can see that it's really getting to find out on which end is going to be our leaf and which end is our stem. Okay, so you can see that we've got the material forged down just about where we need it to be. So our next step is we're going to be doing is the rounding out process and rounding out the metal to give it more of that stem look. Okay, so we've come out of the fire, and I'm going to have the material laid up on each one of its corners, and I'm going to hammer those down. And as I'm hammering, I'm turning the material to start rounding it out. Now, I don't hammer this thing perfectly flat. I like leaving the hammer marks in it to give it a little more character, and it makes it look more natural. Okay, so we're going to straighten everything up. We're just doing some light hammer blows just to get it straightened up. And you can really see how much material we've moved. You can really tell where the stem is. You can tell exactly where our leaf is. Okay, so when we come out of the fire, we're going to just start hammering straight down. We're just needing to get it flat. And now we're going to start hammering on the left side and the right side, or front and back, or whatever you want to call it. But we're just hammering on each side to get the metal start going wider. We're not kicking the metal, we're actually hammering and stretching the metal. So I'm going to hammer down, and I'm pulling the metal to one side, then I'm pushing it to the other side. As you can see, you'll see the material move back and forth as I'm hitting it. And that's fullering out. That's making the material wider. Alright guys, so I'm just doing a little straightening, and this is our basic leaf. We're going to brush it off a little bit. It's one of the spade style shaped leaves. So we grabbed one of our basic chisels, just one of the cheaper chisels I talked about in other videos, and we're going to start cutting veins into it. If you do not have a hold down, I'm showing how to make one of those in the next video, or a vise, but you can hold the material between your legs if you're tall enough. I was almost not tall enough for this process, and then you're just going to start cutting your veins in for your leaf. Okay, so this is where you really get to start having a lot of fun. There is no set pattern. There's no exact way that you're supposed to be doing this. This is your design from here on out. This is your blank canvas to work with. So with that being said, what I like to do is try new techniques and try to learn new skills. One of the mottos that you'll hear me say, and I say a lot of different mottos, but if you stop learning, you die. Whether it be physically, mentally, or spiritually, in some way you die when you stop learning. So I always like growing, even with something basic like this leaf. Okay, so I'm going to finish cutting my veins in. Like I said, it's your canvas, you play around with it. And you can see that the veins are cut in, and it's just going to straighten everything up a little bit. There's still some good heat in there. So now I'm going to grab a ball peen hammer, and I'm going to start giving this a little bit more three-dimensional look to it. Alright, so I'm going to take it over the hardy hole, and I'm going to start kind of hammering it down into it and just tapping it down. Take it over the pretzel hole, hammer the front of the leaf down. Again, we're just playing here. We're just having some fun, just making a neat little design, just trying to make it where it has a little bit more depth than just a flat little leaf. Okay, so here is your basic just leaf. If you wanted to cut it off right here, you could, but we're going to have some fun. I'm going to start bending the corners in, folding up on itself. And I want you to remember a phrase that I'm going to say many, many times throughout this. There are no mistakes, it's a design change. This phrase come about because like a project like this leaf where we're playing and having fun and trying new techniques, you know, if you mess up or bend something the wrong way, you know, you can scrap that project, or you can change your design and run with it and see how it turns out. Okay, so you can see that I'm using 2 pairs of scrolling tongs to open this up and just kind of bend it out and put a little bit more shape into the sides of the leaf and give it a little bit more depth. Okay, so I'm going to take it out of the vise and show you how much it's changed from just the original that we had just a few minutes ago. Okay guys, on the next step we're going to need to cut off the stem from the bar stock. If you do not have a hardy tool like what I have here, you're going to need to let your material cool down and cut it off with a hacksaw. Don't quench it in water or anything, just let it cool down naturally. Or you can use a hot chisel. Just be careful if you're cutting it on your anvil that you don't drive your chisel into your anvil when you cut all the way through. You can mess up your anvil really bad. So if you can find you a piece of aluminum, that's what I always use whenever I'm needing to do some chisel work. So we're going to go back in the fire and heat up that back portion of my stem. So now we're just going to draw this out like we would if it was a hook. We're just going to hammer it square and then draw it out to get our finial shape. We're not drawing out a ton of it. We're just going to round it out, straighten everything up right here, kind of losing my heat, or lost my heat I should say. So now I'm just going to keep rounding it out to make it have the shape. Okay, so when we come out of the fire on this next heat, we're going to be making the finial for what's going to become our hook. And remember in the hook video, you know, you go over the edge of the anvil and you hammer down, and then you hammer back on yourself, just tapping. You're not doing heavy blows, you're just doing light blows with this. And you're just going to kind of bring it up on itself and just keep rounding. Alright, so we're going to get really back into playing now. I'm just going to play around with the scrolling tongs. I'm going to make a spot for where a screw or a nail will go for the to hang the hook up, and just tap that down. And then I'm just going to take the scrolling tongs and just really just start bending and moving the material different ways. As you can see, when I come out of the fire, I'm going to grab it with the scrolling tongs again and then just start shaping in this hook. I didn't have a set design for this. It was just a new technique that I wanted to try out. I kind of thought about it as I was going, and it just, played around. As I was saying in the beginning, there are no mistakes. It's a design change, and this was a design change. I didn't actually have a real set idea, and when I started looking at how things were going, I just ran with it. And leaves are a fun project to do that with. Like I said before, they're real forgiving on if you make a little mistake or change it up a little bit. Really can get in there and mess with different techniques. This is a real good project to play around with. So as you can see, that's the finished hook right there. You can see where it'll screw into the wall and you can hang stuff on it. Just kind of a real simple design, but I really like the way this one turned out. So I'm going to do just a little bit more tweaking on it, and then I'm going to go over and quench it in oil. I use a vegetable oil. I don't really care for motor oils and stuff. I know of people who use them, but I like the vegetable oil just because it's a little bit cleaner and not harmful to me. Alright guys, let's get real for a minute and talk about what you learned today. You learned how to draw your material out into a blunt point, which is really handy if you're doing something like a tent stake. You learned how to do another style shoulder. Sorry, that was really hard to say. Another style shoulder, and you also learned how to isolate your material. You also, very important, learned how to full your material out when we were making the leaf and make it wider, which is really handy if you're making spoons or ladles or grease lamps, spears, anything like that. You will always use the fullering process. So you learned a lot of different things in this process. With just such a simple project as this leaf is, you've learned a lot of different processes that is going to advance you more in your blacksmithing. So in our next video, we're going to be making what's called a hold down, which is here it is. Which is this. It's a really simple tool, very, very handy, especially when you're doing chisel work, if you don't have the ability to hold the material between your legs, or have a partner or a vise or something, or it's kind of cumbersome, or won't fit in the vise right. Sometimes these will hold it down very well. So we'll be doing that in the next video. So hit that like and subscribe button, and God bless, and keep hammering.